that used to be some Indians like in a little valley, like going on 6 and you go across Beaver Creek. Was it Dave Chismar used to live there? He used to be like the manager at Cooper, and he passed away, but he was in scouts and he would let our troop.
I mean, we may not.
But he let us camp there. We did camp in Alaska. One winter, it was like, we got sub-zero patches, it was 5 below when we camped.
Okay, it's 4 p.m. and we're live.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey.
We will call this meeting to order for our May Historic Preservation Commission meetings. Can we do a roll call down the line?
How's here? John Sampson here.
Chris Mowen here.
Will Roddy Bush here.
Christina Tracy here.
Right. Approval of our April meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments?
I think it looked good.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
did a
think
good
they're
job.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move. so
Second.
moved. Okay.
All right. Great. Any objections? Okay. All right, meeting minutes are approved. Our administrative items, we have our next meeting date for June 27th. Any reasons that needs to shift?
I'm good for that
Okay,
date.
Not for me.
so far.
Okay. All right, and
I
just a reminder, we will be skipping our July meeting because of the transition from this building to the next building
Right.
over.
Also typically in June, we actually do our officers, the appointment of those. So just a heads up on that.
Great, thank you. All right. I did also want to note that Tracy was gracious enough to sign on for another term, so thank you. We will continue moving forward with this group here, which is great. For our local designations, I know there was a bit of movement with University Hall. Do you want to provide any?
Nothing, nothing new.
Oh,
I did forward, I think everybody got my message from Laura Moore, and that's the last I've heard. She said that they would be making a decision soon, but soon, I don't know what soon means.
right.
So we do not have we're trying to get a model and also find out exactly what wording. I think she did suggest the wording for the plaque. University Hall was placed on the Bowling Green Historic Register in 2022 by the City of Bowling Green Historic Preservation Commission. Now, I did ask her, and I think that was in my message, that hopefully they will have a picture of the building when it was first erected, and maybe a little more history about the University Hall, but I don't know where that is now. I have called multiple times,
Yeah.
and this is the first time I got a response, so I can try again.
We appreciate your persistence.
Yeah. And we will be waiting till we have that finalized, that final design determined. And then we'll reach out to the county commissioners for the courthouse to see if they'd be willing to do something similar. That one's still on the back burner. We have the Boomtown District. John's been working more on the packet for the North Maple proposal.
Mhm. Heather, and actually, and you were included, I think, on our last message about the couple of just little edits, but I think it looks fine for me. Anything that you are finding we need to change, Heather?
Nope, I made the edits based on your real minor suggestions. And I think just, the reference to whatever the FAQs or design guidelines look like would need to be filled in. And then obviously, depending on the date they're mailed, then a deadline.
Mhm.
So I have a copy I printed of that, plus the map that I edited from last time. And then the latest draft, I guess you'd say, of the FAQs. I'm not real sure what those will end up looking like, but you want to review that or?
We were
Take a look.
just discussing FAQs. And we're still awaiting those.
I think there was, there were comments that the FAQs maybe didn't go into enough detail. And then, so we went back to maybe having more of a beefy, I'll call it guidelines for now, but so I don't think that needs to go in the packet, the guidelines, that could be a link in these documents, because it could end up, like we talked about, it's probably going to be a living document. As we get questions, we can think about what that might entail and add to the document. But just having a baseline before this goes out. I haven't had a chance to look at it in the last month, but I know,
I did
Will,
look
you were
at the
looking at
FAQs. I
it.
thought the FAQs looked good. I mean, I didn't see anything that, was real questionable or anything.
Yeah, the only
Very
thing,
helpful.
I think when we have a guideline, we can, I know there's a couple sort of common questions, that maybe we can say, and you can find more in the guidelines with the link in the actual FAQ document as well.
And Chris and I had communicated to each other about the Secretary of Interior's document. And she pointed out that there's like 3 sections, and the second section is rehabilitation. Because the first one's like restoration, and then
Right.
preservation is the last one.
Right.
But our main focus is going to be rehabilitation. So then when you look at the headings, like in the table of contents, it has materials, and then it has building elements and building features and elements.
Yeah.
And when we get to the certificate of appropriateness, I've got something kind of related to that, some thoughts, but I was sort of trying to look at the document that Chris had put together on the guidelines as the matching or incorporating some of the actual wording or things that are in the Secretary of Interior's documents.
Mhm.
Since that's the one the public's going to reference in, some of the links.
Right. So because the way our ordinance is written is, alterations, additions, they all, will have to follow the Secretary of Interior standards. So, and they have a guideline. So we're trying to kind of boil that down to something a little less tedious, I guess.
Yeah,
to read.
not as much details. We've
Yeah.
seen some other cities with there may be like a smaller district, so they can get very specific, even the details like screen doors and things like that.
Right.
And we're trying to look at seemed like the Secretary of Interior's is kind of a little vague on something,
Mhm.
because it doesn't go into too much detail about actually how to maybe handle something. It says, it has some recommendations. Don't do this instead.
Right. So, there are different standards based on the type of preservation. And because, preservation is, preserving what's there, so that wouldn't need a COA. Restoration is restoring exactly what's there. That would probably require a COA. I forget how that's written in our ordinance, but it's, you're basically just saying like, here's how I'm fixing what's here. So where we're going to have a lot of questions is when it's rehabilitation, because that means changing materials, adding additions, all those sorts of alterations. So that's why I was saying, when Will and I were emailing, I said, let's just look at this one document, because that's where the crux of most of our COAs will come from.
This is a section, standards for rehabilitation,
Right.
shows what pages to go to in the document
Yeah.
for information.
So in my eyes, at least, I think the FAQs are in a good spot. It's just the guidelines that need a little bit more refining. I know we're trying to, keep this moving along, so I don't know if that's something that, we can get wrapped up somewhat.
So is it possible, Chris, I know we talked just a moment ago, that we don't get the guidelines quite finished, but we can still go ahead and issue the survey? I know you're anticipating or being nervous about getting phone calls and questions.
Right. I don't think it's necessarily bad for us to say, oh, we don't have the answer to that, but I think we want to have an answer to a lot of the common questions that we'll be getting. It's just so there's no confusion about what this means, or people start to worry that it's going to require things that that's not the intent. So if we already have a document out there, then I think it will help alleviate any wrong information, worry, misinformation that might stir up. I do think it can be a living document as we and we can refine it as we find more information. I just think we need to have a lot of our the common ones will be windows, siding, roofing, front doors, porches, probably. For residential, the commercial which I don't know if we'll probably only have 2 commercial properties in this, but we might want to look at, if there's storefront, would be another one for those. So that it's not, there's not like it's a novel of information. It's just,
So
I think we want something we can go to when someone asks a question, we can just pull it out and say, look, this is what it says. Here's how we'll handle it. I think that will alleviate a lot of community members' concerns.
I think they could go to the secretary's document first. And we have the link to that. And then if that doesn't clarify it and they have questions, then maybe to come to the HPC. Because I think the living document's going to get modified case by case as we go through and find out what's, the applicable to Bowling Green.
what we're talking about, in case, no, we're not really talking about Boomtown. We're talking about the Maple Street proposal, which is 2 blocks on North Maple. And this is sort of our test case of creating our first district.
Right.
Of course, we want to be prepared for everything. But I'm anxious not to take too long on this. It's kind of dragged on for a long time, this effort. So
Can I add my 2 cents? I mean, being the front line of answering the phone calls, my staff, the less onerous it is on us would be very helpful. So I
Right.
totally agree with Chris. This is new to us. We're not architects. So we would be fielding calls that we don't have expertise in. So that's why I want to be really careful, because I'm going to have these top 10 common questions and I'm going to be very uncomfortable, quite honestly, until I have a document to reference. I can read the Secretary of Interior standards all day and I think, again, they're vague. I like the idea of referencing HPC, but if we're only going to give them X amount of time to respond, they may not have time to go to a meeting to ask before they sign their survey. That makes sense. I mean, I'm an expert in the zoning code. Might not believe that, but I am. And that's taken how many years to get passed? And so this is a
Right.
much heavier regulation on someone's property, I would say, with the commonalities of what people may do that gets in that kind of gray area. So I'm a little nervous as a staff person myself, with all my years of experience fielding this first introductions. I want to be really careful. I want to prepare my staff. So the more information we have would be really wonderful from Will and Chris, from your expertise. So, I mean, I can give you a whole list of things that we deal with on a daily basis. That's kind of what I was reflecting in the COA.
Mhm.
I'm going to have the fence questions, the paving, the patios, the pools. I mean, this is the kind of stuff we deal with every day. So I want to make sure that we know what we're going to say when someone asks us a question, because they're going to.
Mhm.
You're going to have people that are probably pretty honked off that they got this letter and they don't understand it, all the way to someone like you who understands it. But, you know, we're going to have all the gamut of
Yeah.
concerns and questions. Even though you only think it's 2 blocks, there's still, you know, that's people's houses.
Mhm.
So I just want to be prepared.
So sorry, Christy.
No, I have a general question. So, and this is just sort of like high level. If we designate that area as historic,
Mhm.
right? Do we have to state that if, you know, folks' homes are in this area and they want to do some sort of rehabilitation, they do have to adhere to the guidelines that are national in scope? Or could we, I don't want to say create our own guideline because I know we sort of are doing that a little bit, but I guess I'm thinking about if we approach this as, okay, you're in, and I'm thinking of the homeowner, right? Okay, I'm the homeowner, I'm in a historic area. What does that mean for me? Am I going to be, you know, held to certain standards as it relates to rehabilitation? Or is the Historic Preservation Commission actually saying, yes, you're in a historic area, and if you'd like to make, right, like do some sort of rehab or do a pool or something like that, here's how you could do it and stay in line with the history of this area, right? I feel like that approach is a completely different approach, right? So that way your folks would be like, oh, thank you for calling. And we have, you know, the materials to help you if you'd like to stay in line with the historic preservation. Here's what that looks like. And, you know, reference the secretary document, but also, you know, you don't have to. I don't know. I'm just, there's a fine line. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so it is, the way our ordinance is written, it does state, that properties locally listed
Mhm.
are, you know, have to meet Secretary of Interior standards.
Okay,
It's,
never.
yeah. And that was, you know, over the time of writing the ordinance between the people here in the city and then, between our, and our SHPO office, there's certain requirements for the CLG, and that was a big one we talked to, Nathan Bevel a lot about, is how we.
But I think when you're writing these standards, it can be done in that positive way
Yeah.
and not in the,
Yeah.
oh,
I
you
agree.
can't do this.
Mhm.
Uh,
I
Well,
think,
the secretary's document, it really is pretty vague. I mean, it doesn't go into specific and say, here's what the bricks will look like. It goes through and like say under masonry, it just says, you know, it has a column of recommendations, identify retaining, preserving features, and then it has not recommended, alterating features important to finding, replacing historic masonry features instead of repairing or replacing only the deteriorated masonry. So it doesn't go into really specific like
mhm.
pictures or details. It's just kind of, here's what you don't want to do. Like
Right.
some place will say like, well, like removing paint from historically painted masonry is not recommended. Because then you start deteriorating brick.
Right.
You shouldn't paint in the first place, but a lot of them are. So it's like, and a lot of people want to sandblast it and that just ruins.
Yeah. So the initial document I set up, it went, it kind of went through, I'll say for instance, like siding, or what I call kind of facade materials. And then different types of materials, if it's masonry, if it's wood, if it's stucco, aluminum, you know, those sorts of things. What is repairing that? What kind of things as a commission would we ask to see for a COA? If they want to replace it, what would we want to see from them in terms of, you know, that would still meet those standards? Just to kind of help guide them and all of us when someone says, okay, I have, you know, wood siding, I had carpenter ants get into it and I can't salvage it. What can I do? And we can say, well, here are some ideas of how we can help you, come up with something that doesn't detract from the historic fabric, but is also, cost effective for our members. We're not trying to make it an economic burden on anyone either.
I think there's a lot of companies that are making products for historic buildings that are, more modern materials. They may be a cementous kind of siding that's got wood grain in it
Right.
to be able to put someplace that used to be wood siding, and it's going to last a lot longer. And something like that would be
Yeah.
something we may recommend.
So I'm sorry. So if I'm a resident and I live in this area and my area is deemed historic and I want to do some sort of rehabilitation, I would have to submit to the commission and with my CO.
COA, certificate of
COA.
appropriateness. Mhm.
Mhm. And then we as a commission would have to approve that for them to do any sort of rehabilitation. Correct.
Exterior.
I was just going to
right.
say that exterior.
And
rehabilitation.
I think she's getting to my main question.
Right,
Can you
which
list
is-
out what needs a COA and give the
Right.
commonalities
Yes.
of what needs a COA?
Because
Or
otherwise.
say this may need a COA or likely needs a COA and then list those. And then, like what Will said earlier, maybe you can reference right to the page numbers later on of the Secretary of Interior standards.
Right, and I feel like within our ordinance, is there a way that we could be more specific about the things that are more relevant than others? Or do you just want to make that blanket statement, to be, I guess to my original question, if you want to be labeled as a historic district, do you have to adhere to all of the secretary? Okay, well then maybe we can't do that, but because I was going to say it would be maybe more streamlined if we selected very specific things. And those were the only things that we were, right,
Yeah.
saying, if you want to do any rehabilitation on your siding, you have to submit a COA and this is what it could look like. I guess that's kind
Yeah.
of where I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what doesn't need a
that's-
COA?
What doesn't need a COA and what,
Mhm.
right, like, I mean, I guess that's.
Yeah. And that was one of the FAQs. It was,
I think I remember that.
what are examples of work that will not require a COA? And so we said, all interior work, general maintenance, such as tuck pointing, paint touch up, repair of existing roofing,
Mhm.
window siding, et cetera. Paint colors and door hardware. And then there was a note that I'm not sure who noted that we should probably elaborate on this.
Me.
Yeah. But, we could, I think that's where instead of doing a hefty FAQ document, then we say for additional,
Mhm.
see the guidelines at this location. Because that what are examples of major exterior work reviewed through a COA? Full replacement, new roofing, siding, windows, signage, awnings, installation of additions to the structure or alterations to the existing form. Again, a note, question, how do we elaborate?
Yeah.
So, some of that's verbiage taken from our ordinance, some of that's written, and then some of it's taken from Secretary of Interior standards, how they phrase things, because that's our document per our ordinance that we have to follow.
I know we talked, excuse me, I know we talked at one point of using one of these meetings, more or less of a workshop for us to look at that
Mhm.
document and make some decisions. I think we've gotten to the point where we need to look at specifics rather than talk about the general functions and so forth. So I would recommend that we do that.
I like the idea of the document and the FAQ is great. What I like also is like a one pager, right? For a homeowner, like here are the things, here's the list of things that would, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, like here's the list of things that if you intend to modify to your house and you intend to rehabilitate, this is where, right? It's just a quick and
Right.
dirty one pager. And
Right.
then it could lead you to, right, either the larger document or the FAQs. I know that's like adding But I
Yeah.
feel like, but it just be very specific to, if you live in this historic district, here are the things that are important to remaining, right? A historic property and,
Are you suggesting we have a guideline that's specific to the district and not the city as a whole?
not necessarily. I
Okay.
think I'm just thinking of it from the homeowner's perspective. Like if
Yeah.
I'm a homeowner and I don't know anything about what it means to live in a historic district, it's like, how would I comprehend all of this information? It would
yeah.
be a lot, right? And
Mhm.
going to, I agree that that's an important the secretary's document is important, but I need just a quick one pager. If I intend to replace my roof, what does that mean? And
Yeah.
what are my steps to do that? Okay, I'm going to replace my roof. Step one, I need to talk with the Historic Preservation Commission and submit a COA, right? Step two, here are the materials that you can use to replace your roof, right?
Yeah.
And then step three, here are the people or the providers of those materials and general
Mhm.
contractors that help you with that. I'm thinking of the practicality of
Yeah.
it from a boom, 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 if I'm a homeowner.
Yeah, I think we could do that pretty simply by at the beginning of this guideline document.
Yeah, like a quick.
And then it just says, if it's roofs, turn to page 4.
Yeah.
If it's,
Yep.
and then the roof portion outlines, if you have asphalt shingles, if you have,
Yep.
membrane roof, those sorts of things. So people can skim, okay, this is what I have. Here's
I
what
love
need.
that.
Yeah, that's how I'd like to set up the guidelines.
Yeah,
It's the only reason I say it's going to be beefy is because there's a lot of different materials out there that
I think
We
it's
all
okay
have
to
in
have a beefy
Yeah.
document. That's okay. If it's beefy, fine. But then we need to complement that with, for the homeowner, here's
Yeah.
your step 1, 2, 3, and here's where you go to reference.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
okay to have
exactly.
beefy document.
I
my
am hesitant. I don't think we should be providing specific material.
You have to be careful legally, probably about
Right.
specifying any kind of material.
Yeah.
Because
specific
like
material and
architects, we do
people.
this and we're responsible if it fails. It comes back. You have to-
And we
Hey,
can't,
yeah,
So
we,
the secretary's
change it.
document doesn't offer
it doesn't go in-
replacement materials.
No, it wouldn't go in.
Not specific enough to
Like a
like
model number
manufacturing,
manufacturer.
right? It
Got it.
says,
and we can't also list builders.
Right,
Right.
contractors.
We
Yeah.
can't do that. As much as I would like to.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that?
Um,
Just
who do we
because
leave
of-
out? I mean, do we list every builder in town? And if we endorse one and not
Yeah.
another, then it's a problem.
Well,
They could-
I'm just thinking of specific contractors who are, talented or
They-
have experience in rehabilitation. There are
If
are
it failed, they
GCs that
probably
are.
could come back and sue the city.
I mean, that's
If there was a
a
failure or
legal
something.
question, I think, right? for
Yeah,
our
we can't
city
recommend
attorney.
anybody.
Okay.
We could recommend that perhaps recommend, I'll say that, they look for someone with experience or who advertises themselves who does.
Maybe where the
restoration
friends come
and-
in too. The friends could possibly create lists or something to help each other and. Because
Right.
you have experience probably with good contractors and ones you would not go back to or. Could
But
recommend.
I don't think that's something that, that the commission can necessarily, but
Maybe
I
we
mean,
could
there's
take
ways
those
to put
to-
stuff out there.
To Jeff's point, though, I think it's really important that we do note that if you're doing any sort of rehabilitation, you want to ask the contractor if they have experience with historic
Yeah.
rehabilitation and that kind of thing.
Right.
Past
At the
projects
least,
and stuff.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I think
At the
that would be
least.
good. Mhm.
Yeah.
And, some of this might be, if I'm a homeowner, I might be doing it myself, right?
Yeah,
then-
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Where, so we're not saying like you have to hire a contractor and you have to hire all these people to,
Mhm.
again, we're not trying to be financially burdensome.
Right. I think the concept of coming at this all from, we're here to help.
Right.
I think that's what we're trying to, say to the community. We're here to help. And I think designating an area as a historic, area is a good thing.
Yeah.
And, here's why. I think that's coming at it because I think it can be perceived as, oh, we're this area is being designated and now there's complication with anything I want to change with my
Right.
property.
So I think we've done, the document that's already been put together has some, reasons why historic districts are great and
Mhm.
why we're all want to, and we have on our, a lot of our meetings, we've discussed some of these like principles, and so hopefully we're continuing to get that word out there. What I would like to do is, so this guideline document I've put forward is kind of, it's bare bones. It's just bullet points. If I have wood siding, here are the things. But I think some sort of an introductory page that kind of sets the helpful tone would be
Mhm.
useful. I don't know if maybe you'd be willing to draft something up.
I'm happy to take a
Okay.
stab at it.
Yeah. And then the actual guideline could be a little bit more just kind of mean bones, like, here's what I have, here's what I can do with it.
Yep.
I think some of it needs to be rearranged to match the guidelines. I don't.
I'm gonna
there's-
pass this out. We'll talk about with the COA, but this is something I'm recommended even say being in the place here, the proposed improvements. It's like. But anyway,
Did you have a chance to look at the guidelines and see if we need to rearrange them based
I
on the
did.
guide,
we're going. to send them
Secretary of
to-
Interior guidelines?
I didn't,
You
I didn't go
didn't
back
get
and
the
look.
email?
I didn't see it.
Okay.
That's why I was with this.
My to-do list. So if you'd be willing to help me kind of
Sure.
read through the
Yep, yep.
the bullet points I put together, and if you know of some of this information, and we can
Sure.
just kind of
Yep.
tag team that.
As I go back and say, look at the guidelines and then I look at the secretaries, this is from the Secretary of Interior's document under rehabilitation. It's
Right.
the index. It has 3 building materials, masonry, wood and metals. And then the next section's on building features and systems. So it's roofs, windows, entrances and porches, storefronts, curtain walls, structural systems, mechanical systems.
Yep.
And at first I wasn't going to include structural and mechanical, but then I went back and read the secretary's document, and the structural gets into like if it's some structure that could change the exterior appearance of a building.
Right.
So that's why I put it in there. Same thing for mechanical, because it could be something that's like an air handle or something up on a
The
roof.
roof.
So I
Mhm.
thought, well, it needs to stay there because that's something that may. And when you go back and look at our ordinance, and it talks about the function of the HPC is going through and looking at to make sure like the corridors, there's a kind of a list of things about what its function is when a COA is sent in. So it's not to get into the petty little, it's to look at overall.
Mhm.
So if you did say masonry, if they're gonna maybe check off, yes, they're gonna do something related to masonry, then the guidelines could have some things on masonry.
Mhm.
But it would be good to see like what is the home owner proposing to do? Are they wanting to take out a brick section and replace it with T111 plywood siding or something? It's like,
Right.
maybe not acceptable. But there may be something, some other kind of masonry that would be meet the era,
Right.
So you're suggesting adding these
Well,
points
it's
to
either
what
that or
Heather
looking at
prepared?
like Heather did a really good job putting this
Yeah, it
together.
looks great.
Was even looking at, is there some of the proposed improvements there that it's kind of marrying these two together?
Mhm.
Because I don't know, I think there's some on Heather's list there that aren't in the secretary's
Mhm.
list.
Mhm.
Right.
But they're
Like
based
say
on your
swimming pool,
experience.
swimming pool, would we ever would we have a COA related to a swimming pool?
I don't know. That's why I put it on there for you to look at.
I don't know.
I'm going to start studying 19th century backyard swimming pools.
This,
Um,
but it may be kind of merging these
yeah.
but it's kind of always keeping in mind the Secretary of Interior's format as we do things, because if we keep referencing it, and then with the guidelines kind of connecting things, we talk about windows. Okay, let's
Right.
do this. go through the guidelines and look at the windows parts.
And I would be as clear as possible because we're talking about the average person who likely has zero experience.
Yes, yep.
So when I look at structural systems and I mark that box, I don't know what that means. It's just
Yeah,
being
yeah,
very
yeah.
specific because, you're
Yeah,
going to
so-
start talking architect lingo, but we're
So
probably not.
maybe just
So
like a backup document to this, like a notes. In other words, some.
I would just be
a
as
sheet.
specific as possible. So if we're, okay, what's curtain walls? See, I'm already looking going, huh?
Yeah, I
Okay.
wondered about
So we
that.
need to just make it
Curtain wall's
very,
more like a skyscraper. I don't know that we have much curtain wall in downtown. It's more of the
Can't think of
mullions
building.
and
Oh,
glass, a
yeah,
lot of glazing.
So we should use a different
What-
term than that.
Well, but we could run into it.
Um,
And it's in the interior, there's a whole section on curtain wall.
I'm not saying we could include it, but maybe not.
Not
If
right now.
that's all I saw,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know either.
Well, and it may be
No
to
idea.
define it and then to show a picture of an example.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's some of this, right? We could sort of cater this guideline. What I mean by saying like, this is a living document, right? If we have our current boundary kind of figured out and we know that there's no storefront, and we can just sort of save that for later, add it into the document in a couple months, right? Curtain wall, we don't have any of that on North Maple. That's something that
not
we don't
yet,
have to
yeah.
focus on right now. So we can focus on what's specific to this and then add to it as we expand to other areas. I will. In terms of getting this guideline document done and and this sort of like introductory cover of it. I think we need a hard deadline so we actually get it done.
Tomorrow.
That's hard.
Can some of this be done via email? I mean, I would hope that you could work together over email
Yep.
and then maybe share it with the committee. We can do that, right? Without having an official meeting.
yeah, you can.
And
Have you-
maybe we can speed it along. I mean, if we wait another month and then we don't have July.
Right.
But do you really feel you need it to go out with the survey?
I was hoping it could go out next week. Do I
Yeah, the
feel like
guidelines.
we need the guidelines?
Yeah.
I think the
Chris-
moment the
Chris is
surveys
feeling that way.
hit people's hands, they'll be calling Heather's
Yeah.
office. And I think they're going to need them to be
Mhm.
able to field questions.
Yeah, like I said, just a bare bones document that Christina was mentioning and I'm mentioning what needs a permit or COA, what doesn't. That's really what
Yeah.
we're looking for.
That's why my joke about the swimming pool, it's actually something somebody might ask about, right?
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Every day, fences,
Mhm.
pools, patios, sheds. I mean, this is what we're doing every day. And that's another whole topic. They may need a zoning permit too. So they need to know
Mhm.
all of the steps of the city, not just a
Right.
COA.
Right.
Not to get like, it's tough because until we do the inventory of the specific buildings, we don't know what specifically, if someone calls and says, well, this is what I have at my house. We haven't determined as a commission what is historically significant of that structure. So, if they ask about a fence, well, the fence may not be historically significant and we as a historic commission don't, have much of a say. But if we go there and we say, oh, well, this is historically significant, then they would want a COA. So, there's a lot of, till we have it all figured out, there might still be some unanswered questions, but
Those are not things we can put into a document though. I mean, right? I mean, we can't say the fence needs to be looked at by the commission. I mean,
Well, once we, to create the actual district, this initial step, excuse me, we have our boundary and we say, these are the properties and we're doing the survey, right? This is sort of step one. Once that gets approved, then we actually have to create the document that says, this is what is in this historic district. And that's when we inventory
Right.
every parcel or structure. And then that's, it gives us our snapshot in time of what's there today that is still historically significant.
Mhm.
Right now, it may be good just to do the document on what's needed, what needs to a COA.
But I think if we say, if you're replacing your roof, you need a COA. So Heather's department's gonna get asked, well, what can I replace it with?
Well, but the thing is, I guess just, I'm not sure could get into doing, well, I'm going into a lot of detail in it.
Right, so that's,
That's why I'm thinking like of having in detail about the roof. If you had what needs to be, so you say about roof. And then you go into like some detail about, why we're trying to maintain the architectural character of the existing roof. And maybe we may need to go walk there and look at what roofs are there. There's probably asphalt shingle,
yeah,
and probably tile. I mean, we may need to go look and see in that district there's probably a limited number of roof types there.
materials,
Yep.
right.
I guess.
That
and
are
let me-
visible, because we probably don't have any flat roofs except the city building or, something that you can't see from the street.
And maybe this is a link that I'm missing. But in this example, if I'm a homeowner and I fill out the COA about the roof, and I want to ask the question, okay, well, I want to update my roof.
Mhm.
But the commission can't recommend any materials.
We can recommend materials, so we can say a composite material, an asphalt shingle, like those are things. We can't say a specific manufacturer.
Oh,
There's
I
like,
see.
say
I
for
see what you mean.
example,
Okay, I understand.
on the
Yep,
walking
I
tour,
gotcha.
there was, it was pointed out some of the houses that had the terracotta decorations up at the ridge,
Mhm.
and they're gone. And like,
Yeah,
it'd
I
be
understand.
really hard to get to, you'd need a crane to get to them because you can't walk on the tile. So it may be to look at, like, if you got a tile roof, here are some alternatives they look like tile,
Right,
but they may be like concrete or cementitious or fiberglass. There's different
right,
different
Okay.
products that emulate that material.
right. Yeah. So we can provide
Generic.
Like
material.
alternatives, or,
so
Okay.
but it may be the inventory, like materials, like be like wall materials, looking to see, is there any stucco or is it just all brick? Is there wood? Like what kind of sidings there? And there'd be, this where the guidelines come in, because you've got a lot of those listed.
Right.
So we could go through and use the guidelines. Maybe you and I could walk through there and just use the guidelines and mark off which materials we see in Maple Street and just come up with guidelines for Maple Street for right now.
So I think the ones that are generally character defining, no matter the the structure, roof, walls, windows, doors, so I think if we kind of stick to that, that's going to be a big chunk of the questions anyway. If they get into the nitty gritty about a fence or a pool or a driveway, then that's where I'm saying we might have to say, that's not something we've nailed down just yet. We'd love to have further conversation. Can we?
I think you're
touch
gonna
base.
need a list of like what needs a COA and what doesn't. And I think like to come out with it, because then the homeowner's gonna say, well, okay, well, does that mean that I have to wait to renovate my fence? Or do you see what I'm saying? Like, they might say something like, how do I move forward? I think what they might come back with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So coming up with that specific list of, this is kind of where I was going with my very first original question was, and you said it, Chris, what is deemed relevant?
Yeah.
I think we have to define that for the district, whatever we say, and then come up with, okay, well, if these things are deemed relevant, here's what you need to do to submit a COA and write that kind of a thing. I think if we leave it to interpretation, I think that's where people will get confused.
Yeah, I agree.
And they're gonna say, well, do I have to wait then to renovate my fence or renovate my whatever that we haven't yet?
Mhm.
Maybe if, well, what if this, maybe you and I could meet and go over the document together, and then maybe we come up with something and propose it to the commission.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, that would be. Said, the other portion of the guidelines that I didn't initially started had a defining historic features of architectural styles. So just lists out if it's a Gothic revival, if it's a Queen Anne, if it's a commercial style, you know, what are sort of the defining features, just so I don't think that portion, that to me, that feels like it's a little bit in the weeds where we are. It's not quite where the level we are right now. But when we're inventorying the properties, that's where it's going to be
Right.
helpful.
Right.
We say, this is a Italianate, you know, the defining features are these, so we'll want to make sure to document that when we inventory it.
Good.
So we'll just, that's another,
Our next
our next
phase.
Yeah,
phase.
because
Yeah.
the immediate
Yeah.
purpose now is to help people decide whether they want to, you know, be in favor or not
To do
of,
it.
of the district in general and not just of their own property
Yeah.
necessarily.
And I hate to say this because no one's gonna love this, but it, you know, there, so much of this is a case by case basis, right? Because we don't know what's currently on these properties. So until we inventory, it's hard to know specifically every little thing. So keeping it a little higher level, I think.
It's even when you go through the ordinance, it even talks about this, the streetscape and things that's sort of like that would about need to be established now, say, to maintain it.
Hmm.
You know, because as it keeps getting altered, that, you know, it would need, anything that's done would need to kind of consider the streetscape or the
Mhm.
corridor. It gets the big picture.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So back to specifically the North Maple. I think we were all in agreement that the packet, you know, there weren't any more edits to, we have our letter, the map, FAQs. Like I said, I think the FAQs could, a lot of the where we said we need more information could just say, see this guideline document.
So we will need to wait until you have something to show us, and then before we can even put a date in of sending it out and returning. So that's going to depend on the
how
next
quickly we
step.
can move.
Yep.
Yeah, on the
Yep.
guidelines. But do we need to vote on this document, the packet that might be sent out?
We can.
And do we need to send it to legal, or has that already been done?
Well, he's seen the original first draft, but I
Okay,
figured
I
once the
couldn't remember.
FAQs were done, I'd show him again.
Okay.
So I propose that we accept this second draft that Heather has provided for us. Any seconds?
Second,
Can we just caveat that there might be edits to the FAQs?
Mhm.
Those few
Right.
links.
Yeah,
type
they are it.
documents.
Yeah.
Okay. Any, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we will get the guidelines done and then we can set a date on when those will go out. And I'll get with you all on how quickly we can do that. I think if we could have something out so that it gives, you know, if we have a little bit of time, people get the mailer, and then maybe it's like they can come to a meeting. and then fill out the survey, shortly after that meeting, just to give them an opportunity to come in person and have any, so we can address some of this. But we have to kind of see how quickly we can get all this going. So I'll touch base with you all on how quickly we can do this, so we can get things going, moving out into people's hands. Any other comments on North Maple? Okay. Next on our agenda is Friends of the Historic Preservation Commission. Our buildings of the month, actually did not save that on here, but we have
South Main
June.
School just
Yeah,
got
South Main School just
posted in the
posted.
e-news. I just submitted the 622 East or West Wooster that you wrote. So that will be for June. I didn't look after that.
I think we had July as the children's home. And then we were going maybe Clazel, I think, in August. And then I think at that point we were looking at maybe filling, we got 32 properties on the walking tour, so we can see how many of those would be interested in being buildings of the month for the remainder.
And we got one nomination from someone.
Oh,
I didn't write that down, but it's on North Prospect.
were they part of the walking tour?
Yes.
Okay, great. I might have filled that in for September already. I can't remember.
I think we needed a little more information, but definitely
Mhm.
got our first one. So that's good.
Great.
319 North Prospect. That was it.
So I think we're pretty well, if these property owners are okay with us taking what they submitted for our walking tour and including that in a building of the month. We had some really great submissions to that walking tour that would be fun to add to those building of the months. So I think for the remainder of the year, I think we're pretty well set on what we could fill in for those. But I did want to circle back on our May South Main School. Because, we thought we might have the building owner seemed in support of saving the building
Mhm.
and what we might do to encourage him to do that.
Yeah, this is the letter that I sent by email, I guess yesterday, right? A draft of a letter to David Roston, who is the owner of South Main School. And we could just discuss whether this does the job, what I should change, if anything, and if it's all right with you, if I go ahead and send this in the name of the commission.
I know I already responded
Yes.
to the affirmative. I think it looks great.
I think it looks good. too. I read it before the.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do we have, is this something else that would need to, if it's being sent out by the commission, it needs to be reviewed by our,
I would feel most
Legal.
comfortable. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
but,
Good.
I mean, we're basically just saying, we think it'd be really great if you did this. We encourage you to, here's our ordinance. I think having those links in there are really helpful. So if we have okay from legal, I think that'd be great. Would you be sending this via email?
That was my
Great.
intent, yeah, since I've been corresponding with them already by
Yeah.
email.
Now, was your thought to have, you said a possible conference call or a video meeting
That's,
with the whole commission or just with you? I mean, either way is fine.
my idea was that he would have a chance to talk to us somehow. I
The whole
don't know if
commission.
that's too elaborate of a plan, but
That'd
it
be a
might be
meeting.
most useful, right?
Be a public meeting, so
Right.
if that's what you'd want to
Right.
do.
Like, one thing we could possibly do, I don't know if it would work this way, that we could have him, if it would work out that way, call in during one of our meetings.
Like the next one perhaps, if
Yeah.
he's available.
Mhm.
Now, how would we,
Do we have the technology for
That's,
that?
Yeah.
that's what I don't know, yeah.
We would use Zoom, but
Mm,
it's hard because the Ohio meetings law doesn't allow that to be part of the record.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, we couldn't have a member on Zoom. I don't know
Right.
if a visitor could be and still be part of the minutes. That's
Okay.
kind of a
yeah.
gray area since COVID.
Well,
I think what we could do is offer that, you know, he talked to one or two of us. And then if we feel like it's something that needs to be presented to the whole commission,
yeah.
then the two,
Yeah.
then whoever talks to him could present it.
Mhm.
I agree with that.
Shall I
Since he's
talk to
not-
him, or do you want to as chair? Should I put him in touch with you, or? I'm happy to do it, but.
I always love talking preservation with people,
Okay,
so.
okay. I think that
Anyone
might
can
be
call me that, but
the formally the best thing to do, right? To have him get in touch with the chair, right?
yeah, I'm
Give
okay
him
with
that
that.
chance.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I give him your phone number as well, or do you want to email and then he can set it
Yeah,
up? You
I
can
don't
set
know.
it up, yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with people having my number. I think if they call into Heather's office, something they can get in, or do you only give emails? I can't remember. Email and phone.
You can. Mhm.
Okay, or I could give him your email so you
Yeah,
could set up a
set up-
time with him
yeah.
directly. Yeah.
Say,
Okay, why don't I do it that way?
yeah. Do we have any edits to this before, we get legal advice?
I'll have to change the last
The
short
last-
paragraph to reflect what we just talked about. That is,
Mhm.
that we'll give him the chance to get in touch with you. Mhm.
Okay. And then if we have those edits, then it can go on to. What is it? What is the city attorney's name, Heather?
Hunter Brown.
Hunter.
Mhm.
Okay. I just keep saying city attorney. I figured I can address his name by name.
I'll make that edit immediately after the meeting
Great.
and send it on.
That was a fun read. It's nice to learn more about the building.
It was fun
Yeah.
to do. It takes a little bit of time, but
Mhm.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's so much more I think I could find out because
Oh,
I've
I
gotten
know.
a few, references since then.
Yeah. Maybe we do a follow-up someday. Part two. For our interpretive signage project, I went through some of the SHPO websites last week and realized the CLG grant is reviewed by the Ohio State Historic Preservation Advisory Board. They meet quarterly. So they are not meeting until June 16th. That's when they'll vote on which grants are awarded, and then we should hear within 2 weeks of that award. So by the end of June, we'll know if we got that grant, and then hopefully we
6th
do.
June 16th is our CLG anniversary, by the way. That's
Oh,
ironic.
um,
Maybe that's good. Good.
Oh,
Be
Good
ironic.
luck. Yeah.
There you go.
That's, fingers crossed we get that grant, and then we'll have a lot of work ahead of us. So we'll just have to kind of keep our ear to the ground at the end of June, see what. I'm assuming Adam will send an email letting us know if we receive that grant. So for public relations, we had there was the demonstration day earlier this month at the Wood County Museum. I don't know if anyone was able to, I was not able to attend. I was throwing my mother-in-law a surprise birthday party. But I saw some pictures, those are always pretty fun to see. I have been trying to reach out to Ted Long about the audio tours downtown, and I think he's probably just gotten bogged down with other things. He runs, he has a full-time day job, and then he runs a historic website and event site. And then he does those audio tours. It's sort of, so hopefully, initially he thought he'd have them by May. But I have not heard from him. So we will be sure to let everyone know as soon as those are available. We've had our yard signs out now for a few weeks now, I think. I've heard a lot of good feedback about,
I've heard good feedback.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's been a lot of fun.
yeah.
Um,
I think, so we had 32 participants. I think we'll probably get even more next year if, as it gains popularity.
So I brought a list if you want those addresses.
Great.
Oops, sorry.
Didn't
Didn't mean to throw it at you.
And one
Thanks,
of the
Dale.
nice things about this website is they can actually
Thank you.
track how many of people have,
Yeah, so I pulled the
Used it.
analytics today.
yeah.
I also talked to Hallie, who helped set this all up, and she said, in her opinion, the viewership is extremely high and it's been a great turnout.
Great.
She logged as of April 29th through this morning. We've had 958 views.
Mm,
And so that averages out to 39.92 views a day.
wow.
You can see, like, as soon as we put the signs up, it totally peaked and it went down from there, but it's still been pretty constant. So if you want to see that, you can.
So they can log in every time we log on. Is that?
They can track
track
views
that.
to the web pages. Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's kind of neat to kind of see when it's been featured in articles and if it jumps, just, watching the success of the program.
Yeah.
I did talk a little bit about this being annual. I think we
Yeah.
kind of made that assumption that it would be,
Mhm.
that if people wanted to keep their signs, that would be helpful. We'll just
Yeah.
keep the same sign. It saves us money, the same QR code. The website would still be there, the information. We can hide it though until next May, once it's no longer National Preservation Month. So we'd still have that information. And then we thought maybe there's just an easy way that we email all the current participants and say, hey, do you want to do it again in 2024? That way we can keep the same form for new people. So existing
Yes.
people, they wouldn't have to do anything unless they want to modify their history at all, but then we would still have the same form for new people. And then I was talking a little bit to Chris about questions we received about this. And I think we could do a better job next year. If you want to talk about this now, we don't have to, but just, how is my house historic? Maybe
Right.
we didn't do a great job of saying, here's why we think you should sign up,
Yeah.
and talk about that a little more detail with our press release and maybe consider that on the form, maybe modifying it. But otherwise, I think it was a great positive thing that you all did. And I would say if we do get more signs, we might need more help. It took Martha and I in our office about 3 hours to hand these out, and it was a little cold and rainy. And I mean, it was fun, but it was also, if we had any more than this, it definitely was a big job, but
Well,
again, a good job.
We can help with that next year.
Yeah.
Just
And I
ask
do
us.
think going door to door, I don't know. I know Chris put flyers indoors. That was extremely helpful. And a lot of the list was just already buildings that we already had the history to. So I just, asked the commissioners, asked the city folks to make sure they're okay with this because we already had all those write ups. So I think that individual contact would be really helpful
Mhm.
next year if we're able to and have the time.
Yeah, I've been keeping my eye out for houses that we might, recommend to them, but
Great. And it was a good mix. Who would have thought we had one on Parker,
Mhm.
for example. So I think it was a good mix all over town and, things I didn't think about till they submitted them.
Yeah.
I wish we could have put one on every house on Wooster, but we didn't have everybody participate, but
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have the interest for next year.
And you'll be able to drive both ways next year.
Yeah,
There you go.
maybe.
See them all.
That's
Maybe.
Hopefully.
And if you have any other lessons learned or ideas, then we can start looking ahead.
Documenting that.
Yeah. I had another thought that I just lost. Oh, we did have a professional photographer take a picture of each structure. And we thought it was a great investment. It wasn't that expensive. It was a good investment to now we have a picture of these structures that maybe, in the future, they will be on our local register.
Yeah.
So, and it just made a big difference to have that high quality, a picture for the webpage.
Yep. And he's also been posting that on his social media,
Oh, okay.
tagging the city, kind of help promote our walking tour.
And I
So
used
that's
one
been
for
great.
I think I used it for the historic building of the month too,
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
pictures. So
Yeah.
May I ask who the photographer is so I can look for the web,
Um,
if you don't know right offhand? no, it's
Lang,
Okay.
I
like
actually
with a
don't
T,
know his last name.
something with a T, THOMBRE or something like that. I probably
Okay.
shouldn't even try. I know it was,
Okay, it's,
I just can't
His
remember.
social media is Wandering Wolf, I think.
Yes, okay.
And that's where he's been posting
okay.
the pictures of the properties.
Thanks.
So through this whole month, the library's been doing the architecture detective event. I haven't heard from them how that's going, but so we'll have to get a feedback from them when that's done.
I have it
Yeah.
at home. And it really reminds me of what you did last Preservation Month.
Oh, okay.
Very similar.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
The I forget what we called that, but the find and seek kind of what
Yes.
building is this on? Yeah.
Mhm.
And they do have a Boomtown walking tour on June 10th. I looked right before this meeting and there are 10 spaces left. You have to register for that on their website. So it'll probably fill up before the date if you're interested. At the end of the month, Wood County Museum is having a Historic Barns of Ohio author meet and greet. I know they had a rough go at the beginning of the year with their radiators
Flood.
burst.
Yeah.
Yeah, the flood they had from their radiators. So this was going to be one of the first. No, is it not happening?
Well, it's happening, but all their events are outside.
Oh, outside.
Museum is likely not going to open till midsummer is their hope.
Oh,
When I
okay.
delivered Marissa's signs, because the museum has our signs out there, she had said that. So
Hmm.
disappointing to all of them, but getting contractors there and it's
Yeah,
been rough.
it's a lot
So
of-
very,
there's a lot
very
of
severe
repair.
damage that they're working on.
Yeah. So we will keep attending their events and then hopefully they get a grand reopening soon. Last meeting, we talked about the Tell Your BG History quarterly sessions. But we didn't set a date for the first one.
Maybe we can talk about that one.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I think having a consistent space for it. I like the idea of downtown because, it's central to the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, so by next meeting, we'll probably have our first date of when we can. We set a date, then we have to get it going.
Yeah. Well, I think once we get it going, then we have it on the calendar. We just one and done,
Right.
right? You just set it and it's the third Thursday of the
Right, exactly.
quarter, whatever it is, quarter.
And then some of the logistics, obviously we can work out when it gets closer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we were thinking of waiting till the fall for that.
I think we were.
The last quarter, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We also have our building doctor program coming October 19th to 20th. We have our signed contract with them and I can't remember if they needed anything else from us in terms of suggestions.
No, I think they're good. We're good on our end. Obviously we have some time, but they're going to touch base with us to provide the advertising, postcards. As I read this, they're going to send us a list of properties of people that sign up that are interested. Again, not until close to the date. And
Yeah.
then the HPC chooses from that list, because I believe it's only a maximum of 10 site visits on Friday. And those who want the site visits have to participate Thursday evening at the workshop.
right.
So, and that will be at the new city building. And it's very specific, but it seems like it's all very doable and will be good information.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what. It'll be a great hands-on workshop.
Yeah.
That we. So, we have some time, but we'll start drumming up interest probably, hopefully, and by end of summer, I would think. I don't know if they told us when all of the postcards and things would be ready.
I don't think so. I just know I gave them all the pictures they want, they wanted for the postcard and advertising. So I think they do it all for us. We
Yeah.
just, if they give us the press release, we'll send it out. And the workshop does have to be at a certain time. So it would be 7 to 9 PM on October 19th. So that's good to know.
Yeah. And then the 20th is an all day, like
All
during the
site
day.
visits. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's very exciting. I accidentally skipped over the workshop on historic tax credits. Initially, before we scheduled building doctor, I was hoping to do this in the fall. But I don't want to overload our community members, schedules with, so we might kind of push it a little bit. It just is, if we wait till kind of late winter or early spring, we might, some people who might find interest in it might lose out on like the spring round if we do, so trying to coordinate the timing so that people have an opportunity to jump on it when they want to. But there are a couple, I have one person who's committed to, a developer who's, done a few tax credit projects, who's committed to this, likes the idea of, kind of spreading the word of how great the programs are. We have someone else who voiced interest, but I haven't been able to reach him. So I might get with you, Heather, and see if you can pull some strings on finding how to contact Eric, because I can't get
He
a hold
likes
of
to
him.
talk, so it shouldn't be a problem.
I know.
Once you get him here.
But that is still on our to-do list. It is something that I would really like to get. We had the intro from the State Preservation Office, but a little bit more from developers and building owners who've done it, I think might be encouraging for people.
The developer might know the timing wise as to how long it takes to do the application process and then which tax period you go for, because it'd probably, to do it for 2023, it'd probably be not doable, if you did the seminar and then for the.
Oh,
construction,
yeah, right,
like
right.
Spring and then,
Right, it's, yeah,
because they would know that'd be part of what they could talk about, like just the process.
yep, yes. So that's, that was on our, that tax credit workshop would be, like I said, I'd like 2 developers to kind of talk about, their stories of, what they found really useful, what they liked, what they didn't like, what was kind of some hurdles. And then I could talk about the actual process side of what those all take in terms of applications, drawings, write-ups, all of the timelines.
So the credits could be possibly available for taxes due like April of
Well,
2024.
the projects have to be completed before the
Okay.
tax credit. So
Okay.
yeah, it all project specific, but the state rounds are competitive twice a year. So that's what I'm saying. We might want to coordinate that so that we're not doing this on, June 20th and applications are due June 31st.
Just missed
Yeah. And people try and scramble. So
like your deadline.
yeah. So I will just keep you all posted on, hopefully we can get Eric's availability and get that scheduled. Do we have anything else on our public relations education? Do we want to move to lobby visitation?
Oh, first, I forgot to
Oh.
mention, so we're members of the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, which they have excellent webinars every month that are free. They also have a great listserv. I don't know if you all are on that, but I can add your emails if you want to. They have great discussions and conversations that oftentimes I'm like, oh, I want to keep that and print that. So they just had a great one about preservation benefits, which we could probably add some of these to the FAQs. So 24 reasons historic preservation is good for your community. And then they had a commission assistance and mentoring program training that they did for new members. And they shared that presentation, which also has a lot of benefits in it. And again, good advice for being a commissioner. So I don't know if you want to look through any of these, but I thought it might be ideas to include some of the citations.
I have to thank Chris for pointing out the one that's tomorrow at 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could still register if you're interested. That one's not another integrity debate, local preservation efforts and strategies in action.
And you can even watch, I mean, if you can't watch it, you can
Yeah.
still sign up and then they send you the link.
The link,
Okay.
right, for later.
You can watch it, yeah, later.
Mhm. Those listservs are, I did find out you can actually go to the Google listserv and search. So you don't have to remember everything that's written in those emails. You can go back later and search through it. So. All right. Now we will move to lobby visitation. If you can come up to the podium here and so that everyone can hear that's online.
I'm Anissa Miller.
Anissa.
I'm here to inform the commission that a historically significant building in our West Worcester neighborhood is changing hands. By 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I expect to be the proud owner of 416 West Worcester, which is frequently referred to around town as the old hospital. Our own John Sampen was kind enough to share with me some information from a history of medicine marking the 50th anniversary of Wood County Hospital, which tells us that 416 West Worcester was not the first hospital of Wood County, but Community Hospital moved in September 1932 to the West Worcester location. And it had once been the home of A.J. Manville, a doctor of Wood County who tragically died in 1902, hit by a train in the region of Custer
Oh.
as he was out treating patients, as I understand. And to the best of my knowledge, although I don't see the date here, community hospitals served Wood County for about 15 years. And I have encountered any number of people whose family members still living in our region were born in that building.
Wow, that's cool.
My great ideal is to recruit a nonprofit agency to spearhead and oversee the substantial task of restoring this building. My great hope would be that it could be returned to some sort of public use, perhaps as a local history museum or a home for different nonprofit organizations, something of that nature. I want to assure you that I am aware that our commission is not handing out the large checks which will be needed for the restoration, but just to apprise you that that I have great hopes for this important old building.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And very exciting.
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, Anissa. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
We totally support you.
Yes, we'd like to see that building be in use.
Let's hope we can find some tangible ways.
Mhm.
Sounds like historic building of the month too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once I have people on.
That is good news. I'm Jan Knapp from 504 South Main Street. And I also have some good news. The last meeting I was at, I recommended the possibility of doing a Shakespeare Roundtable Founders Tour. And I took the idea back to the club. They were very enthusiastic about that. And so that is going to be my project to present to the club in the next year, probably in the spring. But I also got a lot of information about where to go to get help. Ann Bowers was formerly at the BGSU archives, and she could be a good resource for a lot of the things you're doing as well. But and also Marnie at the Wood County Library. So I will be pursuing that. And hope to have it done by next spring. Well, I'll have to have it done or my ladies will be after me. I'll get kicked out of the club. The photos that were taken, you said you did pay a photographer. Is there any way that he could provide the homeowners with a digital copy?
I have
of that?
them. Mhm.
Do you? Oh,
Mhm.
could you send me?
Yeah,
mine?
absolutely.
It was a
Mhm.
beautiful shot that I've never had directly from across the street. So it was on the property of a homeowner across the street, but it was really a nice photo. And then I'm with John on the historic guidelines that you're going to be working on. We need those sooner rather than later so we can get this historic preservation district kicked off, especially in light of the discussions that we've been having with the new zoning proposals. I think it's more important than ever to get that done. And I agree with you that the language should be more of a narrative and not more in from what I think it was Heather said, that we're here to help you. We're not here to be restrictive or to cause you anxiety, but we want your input and let's make this a collaborative experience. So in a narrative form, I think would be really a good way to approach that. And then some of your listings. So that's all I have. I love the work that you're doing and hopefully some of these things will come to fruition. I did get a lot of response to the sign that was in my yard. Some people said, well, how'd you get that? And I said, well, I went online and applied for it. And I said, you probably got that email too. And they, oh yeah, I did get that email. So I think you'll have more response next
Yeah.
year
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, after.
And,
so
and
too.
what a
People
great
seeing
idea.
that.
So, and I'll be putting my sign away.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
I'm Rose Drain. I have a few things. I heard a very interesting program on Michigan Public Radio yesterday on their stateside program that runs regularly at 3:00. And it was about the Sleeping Bear Dunes Gateway Council wanting to restore an old school that is currently unused to a use. And so I've been in touch with the producer at Stateside to find out who the two board members, well, I have their names, but I don't know how any way to reach them, because I think with South Main School being up for sale, that it might be interesting, especially with the fact that that will be in the mixed use neighborhood zone. There can be some interesting things done with that property. If we can find someone with enough money to and enough vision to retain the historic character and make something exciting and new happen there for the city. So a question regarding South Main School.
If it gets historic designation and it changes ownership, does the designation give it any protection?
So it would be listed in our historic overlay zone, which is part of our zoning ordinance. So it would stay in that overlay zone, regardless of ownership.
So does it protect it from being demolished? I think that in reading through the ordinance briefly, there has to be a COA for demolishing a structure. You may have that to deal with.
Right.
I think it has, like, isn't it two structures or two houses to become a district?
Well, I
think-
think what she's asking is if that would preserve it, and I would say technically, we can't say 100% it would, but that there is a process to have that reviewed if they did request a demolition or an alteration or change in use or whatever.
And it has to be
Maybe.
reviewed by this
Right.
commission,
Yeah.
Right,
and we could deny it.
yeah.
So
So
I would think we
you
could
know,
preserve it.
I sincerely hope the owner will consider historic designation, which of course possibly makes his property harder to sell. So that's, it's an interesting position for someone who owns a building that he thinks is worth $500,000 to put that sort of restriction on it. So, I'm really interested in the process, and if there is anything that I can do as a friend of the Historic Preservation Commission, please let me know.
Yeah, thanks, Rose.
Maybe you and Anissa can buy it. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. Great idea.
There was a rather astounding figure named
I know.
for this, the place in Michigan, the school in Michigan. It's in Benzie County. The figure to turn it into housing was astonishing. So I'd like to see what that school is and how big it is and why the figure was so high. Because hopefully South Main School could be done for 1% of that. Let's see. The doctor visit. Will historic homeowners be given the opportunity to sign up? And how do we do that? We have some interesting things that the house doctor might look at. One is a non-functioning pocket door. Then there's a more sort of generic issue of how do you remove old vinyl wallpaper from the plaster without damaging the
Yeah.
plaster.
Yeah.
So that could be an interesting thing that a lot of people may have an issue with.
I think they'll be, the State Preservation Office will be managing that, but there will be a process to sign up.
Yeah, it sounds like it's web-based, if I remember right. We'll
Mhm.
have more information, but
Okay.
I don't know when though exactly, if it'll be a couple months ahead of time.
Okay. Let's see. So I want to side with John and Jan in expressing my ardent desire that the guidelines, the COA guidelines are written soon so that the process can go forward. I have a selfish interest also because I need to convince my husband that we perhaps want historic designation. And until he sees something in writing, he is not movable. Let's see. Finally, I want to mention that if you haven't yet contacted council members in regard to your concerns about the historic central residential neighborhoods, that you contact them before June 12th. Our group, the BG Save Our Neighborhoods group, has been working hard to help council members understand that the proposed PR district is already very densely populated. We don't think it's good for historic structures to be divided into 2-unit dwellings. And we hope that we may sway enough council members so that that can be an amendment for the PR district, no additional 2-unit dwellings. The other thing is that I, in effect, drafted proposed design standards that be included in the PR district because there are very scanty design standards for the central residential neighborhoods in the draft zoning code. So if you would like to see the design standards that I am suggesting to council that they adopt, let me know and I will send those to you in an email. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Russ.
Have you read the self-guided tour yet? Have you read the histories of the self-guided tour? It's kind of interesting, 'cause a lot of those historic homes were duplexes turned back single family and vice versa. I just think it's fascinating to look at the historical features of each building and what they used to be, whether it be a lawyer's office, residential, like that flexibility, I think has really helped maintain those homes over the years. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting how homes I had no idea were, and
Well, and probably a lot of those professions use them originally, you know, doctors,
Mhm.
lawyers use their homes.
like
and
your
stuff.
house, when that comes out, was really interesting to read. Her house next month about, you know, what used to be the children's home and how it's changed hands, and
Mhm.
fascinating local history.
I know, yeah. Did we have anyone else who wanted to? No, okay.
Dale.
Well, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.